What's up everyone, and welcome back to the fifth and final video in this interview series. In this series, I've covered some of the most common or hardest questions you might be asked during the interview and how you should prepare for them. I've shared examples and anecdotes which I believe you'll find helpful, so be sure to check out the Tell Me About Yourself and Why Hire You question after this video if you'd like to learn more. But today, I'm going to be sharing the opposite question that I shared last week, and that's talking about your weaknesses during an interview. No one's perfect, so how can we show humility and admit our flaws? Acceptance is big, and it shows recruiters and interviewers that we're human. We can accept our shortcomings and share with them how we plan on moving forward. So before getting started, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to help out the channel. And now, let's get into it. Regardless of who we are and what we've done, we all have our weaknesses. Now, how do we mention our weaknesses in a way where it actually shows as a strength? If you don't know what I mean by that, I'll be sure to share some examples throughout this video, so be sure to stick around. The first thing that I need to address for this question is to never, and I repeat, never, forget to hit that like button to help out the channel. But aside from that, you never want to go into an interview, get asked this question, and respond with, "I don't have any weaknesses." Because that right there is a weakness. Not being able to admit that you have a weakness and hide it by saying that you're perfect is not the way to go, and your interviewer will be turned off. It's always best to be transparent and admit your weaknesses and how you plan on improving on them. But what weaknesses should you be pointing out to begin with? And well, that depends on the position you're applying for. If they ask what your weakness is for a software engineering position and you say that programming isn't your favorite thing to do, well, you might not be moving on to the next round of interviews. You never want to share a weakness that directly relates to what you'll be doing in that position. It's like saying you're an engineer, but your weakness is math. If you can, try to indirectly share something that was a weakness and that you've worked on since recognizing it. What I personally like doing is to share an example of something that doesn't really apply to what that position is expecting. So for my data analytics internship, I was asked this question and responded that my biggest weakness was not being able to say no. Being that I was an intern or at an entry-level position, I always wanted to respect the people with authority who manage me and my work, so when I get asked to complete an additional ask, I just didn't say no. Recently, however, I've worked on how I can express myself by sharing with that individual my current tasks and their deadlines. If what they're asking won't take long, then I'll happily do it. But I always like to share my current tasks and ask when theirs is due because my plate is already pretty full. By doing this, I was fully transparent. I shared with them my current project responsibilities to prove that I'm not just being lazy, and for them to then determine if that extra task should be given to me or not. It's a weakness to sometimes be a yes man, but you shouldn't think that by hearing this, you should always now say no because you're worried about being overwhelmed with tasks. Notice though, in this example, I mentioned I had a problem saying no. For this company and this interview, I did my research prior and noticed what they were looking for their strengths or recommended skills. And thankfully, for that internship, the main responsibilities were to parse through some SQL code or on MongoDB and just write some more. But also, there were a dozen other interns as well since it was a big company, so the responsibilities weren't just on my shoulder. Through mentioning this flaw in particular, I showed them that it won't directly relate to what I'll be doing since there are others there who will also be more than happy to divide up the incoming deliverables or projects. Something to keep in mind here when answering this question though is to be honest. You don't want to make up a flaw that you don't actually have just for the sake of it, because what if they're going to ask you more about it? You don't want to go down a rabbit hole and that you try to explain a story that's just made up, because then your biggest weakness would actually be honesty. Nobody wants to work with a liar or someone willing to show that they have no morals or ethics just to get a job. This might be a bit harsh, but remember the impression you'll be making during that interview will matter tremendously. After all they've seen is your resume and spent a couple minutes talking with you. Do you want to make a false impression? So remember to be honest because it will prevent hurting you down the line. Also, in the same realm as honesty is not sharing fake weaknesses that are actually backhand strengths. There was someone I remember during a group interview with me who was asked this question and answered how their biggest flaw was always wanting to be a leader. Regardless of the setting, they'd love to take initiative and were comfortable with managing big or small teams. Unfortunately though, that's really not a weakness. That's just you trying to say that you like to take control and be a leader when no one else stands up. It's not a good way to go about this question because I remember the recruiter subtly smiling and taking notes while this person gave that answer. Don't be like that person. Share a weakness that is or was an actual weakness of yours because it will fit better with your overall story. Don't worry about how bad that weakness is as long as you're able to share what you've done to work on it since. Interviewers want to see change and progression and what you're doing to move in the right direction. So as a recap, you should always avoid answering this question by mentioning that you don't have any weaknesses because that in itself is a weakness. Try to refer to previous flaws that don't affect the work you're interviewing for and also mention what you've been doing to improve. Remember to always be honest. Don't make up some flaw because you think it will sound good or is something that they won't ask about again. Be genuine to yourself and to those that you're interviewing for to have the best results. But also, don't try to find any backhand strength that you can use as a weakness. It doesn't end well. With that being said, that wraps up the behavioral interview series on this channel. I've made 5 videos on the most commonly asked or hardest questions you might receive, but I'd be more than happy to continue or make additional videos in this series if you have additional questions. So be sure to leave them in the comment section below. Also, comment below which of these 5 questions you've had during an interview and what you've said. If you're in management consulting, I actually have a consulting interview series going on Wednesdays, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. I truly hope you found this series helpful, and it would mean a lot if you'd show your support by liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you'd like the extra guidance when it comes to your interview prep, be sure to visit my website ryanrafi.com and use the promo codes in my bio for my services and products. As always, thanks. Until next time.